Check out here, I'm standing right in a thicket of these Acacia cibrianas, the paper box. And they're beautiful, I love them, and that's why people in Joburg want them. That's why they are being landscaped in all over the place. You know, all the new developments, they suddenly want these trees. They do grow fast, that's part of it, but they're beautiful, they're African, they're great for birds that nest in them, they're great for aesthetics and that sort of like African savanna feel. They're awesome. They're just not meant to be here, and so we need to get them out. So the issue with this acacia on this property or in this particular region being here is that it spreads like wildfire. So although indigenous, it is actually technically an invasive for this particular biosphere or this region. And so on this farm we're looking to eradicate them or take them out or reduce their numbers. It is a cattle farm, and the issue or the problem that we face then with the cattle is that they eat the seeds and they spread them pretty quickly. And these things crop up and seem to thrive in this environment and grow very, very quickly. Now, to solve the problem, we obviously need to pull them out. There are the said cows that spread seed. So welcome, you haven't hit any rocks or stones, hey?
Yeah, no good, no stone.
No stones.
Yeah.
Being so labor intensive, the extraction of these trees, we either resort to the quickest method we know to get rid of them, which is to cut them down and then burn the stumps. And that normally involves some kind of sort of toxin or something that we don't ultimately want to be putting on the land, but it's a kind of the lesser of the two evils. And so what I've trying to be rack my brain around or find a solution, alternative solution for this, I've thought about the circular economy. So now it's a new term that came across my plate recently and got me thinking, and it's, you know, the sort of synonyms or the sort of let's say related terms are things like biomimicry or ecological. Oh my god, I'm out of breath, I'm so unfit, you know, a couple of steps up a hill and I can't breathe, ridiculous. But yeah, so it's the circular economy is really about, the simplest way that I know how to term it, or to sort of dumb down what could be a complex term, is to say one man's rubbish is another man's gold. And at the end of the day, it's about using less resources. And unlike the sort of linear economy, which is about make, use, dispose, this is about seeing how we can make things last longer and how we can reuse things and how the output from one process becomes the input for the next. So with that in mind, I had a thought and I started investigating and finding people that would want the trees. So we don't want them here. They are in this particular region an issue and a problem, but in somewhere else someone might want them. And weirdly enough, in Johannesburg they're a sought after tree for landscaping, and with all the development going on in the Highveld and in Gauteng, there's a market for a certain size of these trees. So what I'm doing today is I'm doing some sampling. We're doing some sort of baseline tests to see whether or not, firstly, there's enough of the sort of required size of tree. Trees too large are obviously more difficult to transport, and you get less of them per truckload. The killer here is the moving of the trees to a different region, and the transportation costs are what kill the profitability and or the viability of doing a project like this, particularly for the person who wants the trees at the other end. So we have to select a certain size of tree where the optimal amount can be put on a truckload, and that amount is being determined to be 40 to 60 trees. So first thing I have to do is determine if there are 40 or 60 of the right size tree on the farm, which quite positive they are, and through some initial investigation I've counted up to 30 already, and measured 30 already, so that doesn't seem to be too much of an issue. The next thing is to determine the soil quality. We prefer to have something a bit more clayey, so that the roots are bound and protected during transport. So the risk for the person taking the trees is they're going to come down, there's going to be transport costs, there's going to be extraction and labor costs, and at the end of the day they need to have a high probability of of survival with regard to these trees during transport to make it a project worth doing. So what we're doing here is digging a profile pit. We want to just sort of see the soil layers and the soil quality. I can then send that to our partner or the person that's interested in doing this project with us, and we can see then sort of start assessing the viability. There we go. Super solid. That's a good thing. It's going to really hold the roots together and give them a sort of, hopefully make the tree feel like he never left home. So just out of interest, in this thicket of acacias is some bugweed. Now that is a genuine, full-blown alien invasive and a real problem. It spreads like mad. It's really an ugly plant. Actually, in fact, when you extract it, you've got to be careful not to get the powders into your lungs, a bit like asbestos. Yeah, so that's another issue. We are currently working with Department of Environmental Affairs on their Working for Water program and seeing how we can extract some of the alien invasives, and actually by law we're required to. In fact, there are major penalties if you don't. So the thing about invasives, generally we target and eradicate alien invasives, plants that are not part of your local habitat naturally. In this case, it's a bit of a sort of mixed scenario, or a middle ground, because as mentioned before, these acacias are indigenous to South Africa. They're just not endemic to this region. So if we look at this particular biosphere, then we in a way can consider them alien. And the issue with what was, or having on what was grassland, these trees or extra biomass, is that firstly they are going to be using up water that otherwise wouldn't have been used up or would have soaked in to the grasslands, and secondly they're adding more biofuel, and in dry times they can become a bit of a fire hazard. Quite a variation in size, from super small, let me find you one, like that, you can barely see it amongst the grass, to, okay, that's not a paper bark, but they get big. A lot of those down there, let's make the light right, are pretty big paper barks. So the other thing we're toying with is to create an on-farm nursery and test the market in the local area. As much as I've said the local area should do without these trees, what I mean by that is something a bit more local than, say, Johannesburg. Where we position now, we're a little bit closer to, well, we're in KZN, but we're a bit closer to Durban. So I think what I would like to do, and perhaps through some sort of advice from you guys or some inputs from anyone else out there who may know, if there's a market with regard to development and or landscaping in general in the sort of Durban area or even Midlands or anywhere closer to where we are currently that would require these, then it may make sense for us to create an on-farm nursery, extract the trees, sort of eradicate the immediate danger and issue that we face with them where they are, put them in a more controlled environment and grow them.